follows an extract from my book Fête Fatale, available from Amazon. Chapter 3, Part 2. For all of the previous day and well into the night, Emma and Henrietta had been busy baking, filling and decorating cupcakes. They had decided upon cupcakes as they guessed that other submissions for the competition would be the more traditional sandwich sponge cakes or fruit cakes. They also thought that these would be more successful for sales on the stall, as people would be more willing to spend a few pence for a cupcake to eat there and then, or a couple of pounds to take some home in a cake box. They had made chocolate sponges with white and dark chocolate marbled buttercream rosettes on top, miniature Victoria sponge cakes and fairy cakes with Emma's homemade lemon curd filling as filling with some iced lattice work piped on the back of the sponge wings. As they'd baked, Toby had been tucked up on a mattress in Primrose's room, and he had been wrapped up in a blanket and pushed home in his buggy just before midnight. It had been a good opportunity for the two ladies to get to know each other better. Being relatively new to the village, Henrietta didn't really know many of the residents, and the two young mums were keen for a chance to get to know each other. The shared task of baking cakes filled any otherwise awkward silences and provided a neutral platform to begin a stronger friendship. The subject of the mysterious wedding ring and the secrecy of the absent husband was a source of gossip in the village, but Emma wisely steered clear of what was obviously not a matter for general conversation. The topics of mutual likes and dislikes and the common ground of young children provided enough subject matter for the present. It was good to see them standing side by side on the cake stall, obviously enjoying the strength of their newfound friendship and being visibly at ease in each other's company. It was not by chance that the cake stall was situated next to the preserves. Although the two stalls complemented each other and were natural neighbours, they shared the same gazebo canopy because they were both to be judged for the annual WI prize. Neither was it a matter of coincidence that Beth and Emma had chosen to oversee both of these stalls, as this meant that they could legitimately spend the day together. Natalie had also volunteered to preside over the preserves, and as she had supplied a substantial volume of produce on the cake stall, it was only right that she should enjoy the compliment of selling them. "Goodness, girls, it seems that you were very busy indeed yesterday. What super cakes you've made, and so many." "I've never made a cake before," said Henrietta. "It's a bit scary that my first attempts are to be judged for a prize. I've learned a lot from Emma. I didn't think I'd be able to manage one cake, never mind so many, although Emma did all the hard work." "If you mean switching on the food mixer, then yes, you're right. I never get my hands messy when baking. This is the 21st century after all," said Emma. "Oh yes, I've heard all about your slovenly ways," said Natalie, "and I know your treachery in making jam in the microwave. Don't let her lead you astray, Henrietta, my dear. You know it'll end in tears. In my day we had to make do with a wooden spoon." "Natalie, we know full well that your kitchen has every mod con available in it, so don't think you can pull the domestic martyr card on us," said Beth. "Henrietta, you may as well know now that the art of being recognised as a successful baker is to be able to tell barefaced lies. I'm afraid that you've made a bad start, both of you, by admitting that you took the easy way out." "Well, the proof will be in the pudding, or more accurately, the cake. We'll see if telling the truth wins as the prize, won't we, Hetty?" said Emma. "I'm afraid that it would end in tears if I thought I would have to make all of those cakes with nothing but a bowl and a wooden spoon. I don't care how many mod cons you've got in your kitchen now, Natalie, you deserve them. You must have had arm muscles of steel." Henrietta then turned to Emma and said, "If you think you'll be okay on the stall for a bit, I think I'd better go and rescue Nathaniel. He'll be worn out from lifting Toby in and out of that tractor cab." She waved goodbye and walked off into the increasingly busy field in search of her son. Between bouts of conversation and commerce, May nipped into the cake tent and congratulated Emma and Henrietta on their depleting stocks and asked if anybody needed anything. "No, thank you," said Emma. "We're managing fine between ourselves. We've been very busy, though. We've even had some American tourists buy our cakes. They were really thrilled to be doing the authentic English thing. You'd think we were a delicatessen in Covent Garden for how thrilled they were browsing around our stall." Yes, they did seem to be doing the whole English fête thing to the limit. They were talking to John earlier and asking when the poultry competition was to be held. They were very excited. "We've taken it in turns to wander around the fête to join in the fun, and Drew or Nathaniel are making sure we get regular drinks and nibbles. We don't much fancy cake at the moment," said Henrietta. "As you can see, we've got our extra little helpers," said Natalie, as she steered Toby and Primrose away from sampling more of the cakes. "How's everyone doing?" said Beth. "Where are you off to now? Perhaps I can walk with you." "Everything seems to be going smoothly, and everybody looks like they're having a good time. I'm going to the craft stall to check on them there, and then I was going to walk over to Kirsty's to see how her tours are doing before I need to come back for the prize giving in the cakes and preserves competition. It'd be nice if you could come with me. Can they spare you for that long?" said May. "We've nearly sold out, so I'm sure that I can come. I want to visit the craft stall as I've loaned them my Celtic embroideries. I made sure to tell them to mark my sewing as not for sale, but I can't quite rest until I've seen for myself. I've been having premonitions of them selling years' worth of stitching for £2.50. We'd better hurry then. I'm sure I heard someone trying to buy one not long ago." Beth didn't believe her and caught the mocking tone in May's voice, but she nevertheless made a beeline for the craft stall as they began walking. As they turned the corner, the stand came into view, and Beth visibly sagged with relief as she saw her precious stitching clearly marked as not available for purchase. Fastened to the roof supports, Beth's embroideries hung in pride of place. They were intricate Celtic designs taken from the Book of Kells. Drew had painstakingly transferred the complicated designs onto natural linen of an oatmeal hue, and Beth had carefully followed his lines in a neat curving stem stitch with the addition of some French knots, blanket stitch and simple back stitch for the very small complex areas. Each design was worked in a monotone sepia-coloured thread, and the finished pieces were mounted onto stretched canvas. Each one was a labour of love. Once she knew that her precious pieces were in safe hands, she could relax and enjoy browsing around the rest of the exhibits. Beth was thinking that she was glad that the days of crochet doilies with starch-stiffened swans swimming around the perimeter were now over. No doubt the techniques were skillful, but they certainly were ugly. This year there was a surprising renaissance in the interest in tea cosies, and the stall holders were evidently doing a brisk trade in both knitted and quilted varieties of all designs. The market share for such wares was surprisingly diverse too. Trendy young girls weren't ashamed to be seen buying such items, but instead held them out proudly to their friends for approval. Emma and Beth had made dolls' cot bedding using a remnant roll of quilting and offcuts of ribbon and lace. As an afterthought, they had also filled a wicker basket with homemade fabric hair scrunchies in the colours of the local school uniforms, along with some more vibrant fabrics that they had to hand. Alongside these were the usual cross-stitch designs and amateur watercolours. In pride of plates were packs of notelets which were reproductions of the pen and ink sketches that Terry had drawn. After his stroke, Terry had inevitably struggled to occupy his time and talents. He couldn't be expected to instantly bounce back to single-handed drilling. In the intervening period of convalescence, Drew had got alongside Terry and encouraged him to pursue a more sedentary occupation. They had tried oil painting, watercolours and pastels before Terry had found an affinity with a draftsman-like pen and ink technique. Although his confidence with the drill had returned, his stamina wouldn't allow for continuous physical labour, and so his interest in art had continued. The benefits of this computer age meant that he could easily reproduce his artistic endeavours, and they were evidently selling like hot cakes, or just as well as the cold cakes on Emma's stall further up the field. May and Beth continued their path through the stalls and out of the field to Kirsty's house a few streets away. They met Jean sitting at a table across the open gateway to the garden, and near at hand in a box sat a heap of admission tickets. The tours had evidently proved as popular as expected, and it looked like they'd had a busy day so far. Jean explained that earlier in the day 3 and at times 4 groups had been conducted simultaneously, and Kirsty's information sheets had been a goldmine of information for the extra volunteer tour guides. Things had eased off this last hour, and the extra helpers had left to join in the fun in the field and to browse around the stalls. As May and Beth walked along the garden path, they could hear Kirsty talking to the group she was leading. No doubt this was the umpteenth time that she had delivered her talk as she walked through the garden, but she presented it to this current group as if it was the first time. Her enthusiasm was as fresh as her garden. Although parsley by classifications should be situated in the herb garden, I have planted them here in the rose garden as they are a natural deterrent to aphids. We can't really have golden Mozart covered in bugs now, can we? Kirsty said. May walked back to the gate to speak to Jean. Do you want to have a walk and go and browse around the fête? They'll be announcing the prize winners soon, and John will be judging the poultry competition. Thank you for asking, but I'm quite happy where I am. If I win the jam competition, I'm sure that somebody will tell me, and I rather think that John would prefer to make his judging debut without me breathing down his neck. I'm going to put the kettle on in a moment to make Kirsty a drink, said Jean. I think that she's given a cut-off time to Nicola on the flowers stall, so we'll probably come and join you soon anyway. Thanks for all your help, Jean. I know that Kirsty really appreciates you staying here with her. Hopefully we'll see you back at the village hall later. May then made her way back to join Beth, who had tagged along with the garden tour and was currently standing next to the herb garden, listening to Kirsty enthuse about her plants. Mint is a vigorously growing herb which most of us associate with lamb or as a garnish on desserts. It has far more uses than we give it credit for. A cold mint tea can be helpful in controlling embarrassing flatulence, should you privately wish to know, Kirsty said, which gave rise to some embarrassed giggles. Sage produces lovely purple flowers which attract bees to your garden, and we all know that it makes a lovely stuffing with dried breadcrumbs and onion. It's perhaps well known for its application to dentistry, Kirsty explained. This produced enquiring glances, which she answered by saying, yes, it's true. Sage leaves rubbed against your teeth act as an efficient natural tooth whitener. More interestingly, sage tea can help to overcome menopausal sweating, which must surely be a milder approach than the pharmaceutical HRT. As the group wandered around the herb garden, touching and smelling leaves, Kirsty continued her discourse. Once again, the classification boundaries overlap here. I could include the nettle patch in my herb garden, as the young nettle leaves can be eaten as salad leaves. The young leaves don't sting. Also, it makes a good beer, and infused it has a mixture of uses. As a tea, nettles are an effective natural laxative. Mind you, if you make a blended nettle and mint tea, I don't think I can be held responsible for the digestive consequences. Less inhibited laughter punctuated this little gem of wisdom. Perhaps now might be a good time to wander over to the natural garden, Kirsty suggested, and the group followed her to a point at the bottom of the garden. As the group was walking to the end of the garden, May snatched a little of Kirsty's attention to seek reassurance that all was well. They arranged to meet in the village hall, where refreshments were being served later in the day. As May and Beth turned to leave, they heard Kirsty continue her enlightening tour by saying, I keep the patch of nettles here as they can look a bit scruffy, and I don't want to risk getting stung each time I want to pick a few herbs. In the 1500s, the Elizabethan herbalist Gerard wrote that nettles could be found, oftentimes in gardens ill-husbanded. This section of the garden is the least work because if I interfered too much, it wouldn't be very natural, would it? My job here is to let things be and just make sure no one plant gets too out of hand. Some things I have actively planted, but some of the vegetation has just made itself at home. I try and let that steer my designs here as much as possible. For the full book of Fête Fatale, available in paperback or as an ebook, follow the link in the cards in the description box or find details on my website at sharonbill.com. Thanks for listening.